to some of you from his activities down here helping us execute phase 3. And he was a frequent, not very frustrated visitor to
somewhat frustrated.
Nielsen, yeah. So we saw a lot of him here. We relate to him most often with his monthly, now Zoom program called the Sustainability
Project Group,
Project
SPG,
Group.
yeah.
The name isn't any better than the acronym.
No, it's not.
But in any event, if anybody gets interested in that, contact me or Ted or Bob Gettings or any of us, and we'll set you up with an invitation. It's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting place to learn about what other affiliates are doing. But in any event, we're proud to have Frank with us this afternoon. Turn it right over to him.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And can everybody hear me? Usually I don't need a microphone, so I'll use it though, just in case. So nice to be with you today. I have been with the Kendall Corporation for just under 5 years, but I have spent my entire professional career actually working in senior living, almost all of it with not-for-profit senior living and life plan or continuing care retirement communities in particular. So I have with me my colleague Ben Butler, and we're going to tag team this presentation. Ben is 16 years at Kendall, and he had the pleasure of working at our community in Hanover, New Hampshire for 7 years before coming to the corporate office. So he brings a very unique perspective, operational experience, dining experience, as well as now for the last 2 years, he has been my colleague on the development team. What we have changed the name of, our department was development. It's IGI now, which is Innovation, Growth, and Impact. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the growth that's planned. But when Ted and I had talked, I thought what we would start with today is a little bit of a quick overview of the Kendall Corporation, the Kendall system, and how we operate. And then we'll spend some time talking about Enso Village. The screen went blank up here, but you saw the slide. We have a slideshow to show you that's the newest affiliate opening this fall. But Kendall, we are, as you know, a Quaker, we are based on Quaker principles. We were founded in the early 70s. So we are actually at our 50th anniversary as a system. We have about a dozen affiliates around the country, like Kendall at Lexington. And we're a little different than other large systems that have multiple communities. And the reason is our organizational structure is what we would call the federal model, a federal system. And what that really means is, we're the 16th largest provider of life plan communities in the United States among the nonprofits. So if you look, there's a list of the biggest ones, we're 16th. But what makes us very different, and I think what makes us, I think is really a positive approach to our structure, is that we at the corporate office, and there's about 30, we have about 30 colleagues in our office corporately. Our role is to act as a resource and support the affiliates across the Kendall system. But the decision making and really what goes on at the individual communities remains in the control of the senior staff and the board of directors and volunteers of the communities. So whereas if you were to look at some of the other big systems, they're very hierarchical in their approach. So corporate would say, oh, use this product, or it's time for this kind of a PR campaign. That's not how the Kendall system operates. Really, the decisions that need to be made that affect you as residents of the community are made locally by your leadership. And that makes us very different. We have as you would expect, we are a large not-for-profit organization, so we have a board of directors and committees. So we operate as a nonprofit. This is the Kendall Corporation, or K-Corp, as you'll sometimes hear. But over the years, we have, in using the Quaker principles to our structure, we don't have votes at our committee or board meetings. We try to reach consensus, and that also means sometimes that strengthens decision-making because we give everybody at the table an opportunity to have voice. It doesn't mean everybody's always in agreement. You're allowed to disagree, and you're allowed to allow the will of the group to move forward, even if you're in opposition to a certain decision. But that has really made us, I think, a stronger organization because we don't move forward unless we really have talked about and gotten a perspective of everybody around the table. So I talked to Ted Burrows about this presentation, and he said, if you don't bring up the fact that one of our affiliates has announced that they are leaving the system, somebody's going to ask the question anyway. So I thought I would broach that topic as well. Unlike other systems, it's really a choice of the individual communities whether they stay part of the system. So our oldest affiliate, Kendall Crosslands Communities, and it's really two existing life plan communities called Kendall Crosslands and Kendall at Longwood, and actually they have two satellite communities that are little small independent living satellites. But that organization, otherwise known as KCC, Kendall Crosslands Communities, has announced, kind of sadly, I mean, we're not pleased with it, but it's their decision. Again, it's a reflection of the federal system that they are going to be in the process of disaffiliating from the Kendall Corporation. The when is a good question. It's a negotiated exit, so the thought was by the end of the year, but we'll see if that happens or not, because there's a lot of unwinding that takes place. Because if you look at the corporate office, as I mentioned, Ben and I are part of IGI, but there's IT, there's HR, there's finance, there's marketing, there's PR. So there's a lot of connections between the corporate office and the individual affiliates. So we're working to kind of unwind the relationship. And so this is, I said this to Ted, it's, we're not the mob, you're in Omerta, If the community decides, and in this case, the board of directors at KCC decided that they wanted to go off on their own, that they have the depth to do that. We as a corporate entity are negotiating with them, and even though we're not, one of the real benefits aside from the corporate structure that I mentioned, with the various areas of expertise that we provide resources to the affiliates, one of the real benefits of the Kendall system is that we have best practices and we share across different areas of the community. There's gatherings of the dining folks or the facilities folks and so on, and they talk to other communities so you can hear what's going on, what's the latest innovation, what's working at different communities, what's not working. I happen to have the pleasure of spearheading, as was mentioned, the sustainability work at K-Corp. When we get together, it's bi-monthly Zooms. What we do is we have a roundtable and we go around and ask every affiliate what's been going on at your community. And then, there's 20, 30 people on the Zoom. You can hear what's going on and get some new ideas for things you might want to implement at your community. So that's a real benefit of our system. We do a lot of that kind of sharing and best practices. So when one of our affiliates decides to disaffiliate, it's going to change that dynamic somewhat. Now, having said that, I will tell you that we are still in a growth mode at Kendall. Ben's going to talk a little bit about Enso Village, our latest affiliate that's going to be opening at the end of the year, later in the fall. We have several communities under development right now. Much like Kendall at Lexington was built, anybody know? Jan? 2000, okay. I would say, 2000. Okay, 2000. We have other ones that are in planning, and we are working on a couple of very innovative projects. There's always been kind of the what I would call the holy grail in senior living is trying to find a way to serve people of lesser income means, but not low income, so more middle or moderate income. So we got a project we're working on right now, I think that hopefully will help address that topic. We're trying to serve the folks who don't qualify for the low income housing, but probably couldn't afford a full life care community. So we have a couple of those underway, and we are, Ben will talk about Enso Village, and he can fill you in about the second California project, Enso Verde, which is another new development on the West Coast. So we used to be able to say, well, we don't go west of the Mississippi. We were in Chicago. The Admiral is our affiliate in Chicago. But then, hard to believe it's been 10 years. 10 years ago, the San Francisco Zen Center reached out to us and started a conversation about a community in Northern California. And these projects take a long time to develop. And so that one is very close to completion. And so Ben will show you some slides and talk to you about it. Before I hand it off to Ben and let him talk about Enso Village, I figured since the discussion of the corporate, the issues corporately is a little different. Any questions or comments anybody wanted to raise? We're happy to talk, but it's more helpful if it's a dialogue. So we're happy to take any questions. And anybody have any questions about the corporate structure or anything that I've mentioned so far?
Do you hear rumblings from any other affiliates about leaving the corporation?
That's a great question. Are we hearing rumblings of other affiliates leaving? No, we have not. We actually just had, about a month ago, Jan's in the back of the room. Jan, you were there, right? The corporate office, I should have said this at the beginning. We used to be on the front lawn of Kendall at Longwood. Then when the pandemic broke out, it didn't make sense to have 30 professionals coming onto the campus every day, with the virus going rampant. So we moved to a work from home model. And then what we ended up doing is selling the building to Kendall at Longwood. And we moved to the University of Delaware's campus and to a new office building there. It's a little smaller space because we are still using kind of a hybrid work model. A couple days a week you're in the office, and the other times you're allowed to work from home. So we had a meeting at the university. When I wanted to give you that background, when I said we met at the University of Delaware, we actually met at our new corporate office with Jan and her counterparts from around the system to talk about what the future is going to hold. And one of the things that has made the Kendall system unique is that we all agree on a way to affiliate. There's an affiliation agreement, and historically, every 5 years we would get together, all the organizations in the system, and talk about what's working and what's not. The pandemic stretched out the affiliation negotiations a bit longer. It's been a little more than 5 years. It's about 7 years now. But we are close to finalizing the newest affiliation agreement. And what that would do is it will give each of our affiliates the opportunity to kind of reaffirm that they're staying in the system and they are going to go forward with us, together. And so as of now, we have not heard any kind of rumblings that anybody else is considering leaving the system. Yes, sir.
Was there any warning that Kendall Longwood was going to, I call Kendall Longwood because I've had 2 family units there, but they were going to bail?
I don't know, Ben, you want to jump in, Ben? I don't think so, but
That was your
Repeat the question, please.
yeah, the question was there any warning that KCC, Kendall Crosslands Communities, Kendall at Longwood, were planning to disaffiliate?
I would say there was a discussion that happened, can everyone hear me? Is that good? Over a period of several months about the possibility. How quickly the possibility became a reality, I think caught us off guard.
That was a flagship.
It was our, the point here is it was a flagship. I mean, it was our first communities, KCC, Longwood and Crosslands. But we still have 12 communities across the system, and as I said, several in the pipeline. Yes, ma'am.
What are the main reasons for their leaving?
Repeat the question.
The question is, what are the main reasons for their departure? I would answer it this way, and I don't want to speak for them because it's an organizational decision that they made at the senior staff and board level. But they believe that they can provide the services to their own residents. They're big enough. They're one of our largest. They have a very large staff that they can provide the same services as effectively as the services that are being provided by corporate. So that's why they're with the affiliation agreement. As again, should be no surprise. There is an affiliation fee that is charged to each of the affiliates. And so their thinking is they're going to use some of the money that they would pay to corporate to provide some of those same services through their own staff. Yes, ma'am.
About California, how much thought went into earthquakes and fires?
Oh, the question was on Enso Village, earthquakes and fires. I'm going to let Ben, he has how many slides?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a presentation in just a moment, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but the community is built adjacent to a fault line. So, not only was a lot of thought and engineering and over-engineering put into that, we have cautioned on the side of bringing in a third party to do land planning and land clearing before the community even opens, so that we're prepared for the event of local wildfires in the area. So it's something that we think about all the time. And I'll get a little bit more into the engineering and how we thought about that. So thank you.
Frank, one of your colleagues was down here a few weeks ago from IT and made a presentation and showed some of your new space at University of Delaware. I just was curious as to whether there's any synergy in moving to the University of Delaware. Do you have any interactions with the university as such, and what do you see as
Yeah, Bob's asking about our new space at University of Delaware, synergies between the university and Kendall Corporation. I mean, it's a great question. And I mentioned our team is innovation, growth, and impact. And the development side of that, the growth side of it is Ben and myself and Steve Bailey. But we have Diane Massey, who's been with K-Corp for probably close to 7 or 8 years. She is tasked with developing working relationships with the university, different schools in the university. And so what we are starting to do, we moved in there right at the end of September, so it's been about 8 months we're there. There's mentoring programs, there are programs that we're negotiating with the different schools, the engineering program where we're trying to allow students an opportunity to learn more about senior living. Our goal will be folks who might not have thought about senior living as a career may say, hey, this is kind of a neat place that consider working. So we are starting to develop those. It's still very early, but we are starting to develop those relationships with UD. Mm-hmm.
Going back to this affiliation, has there been, what is the status of the Kendall name?
Yeah, there's a great question. The Kendall name, the question was about with the disaffiliation of Kendall Crosslands communities. Has the Kendall name decision been reached? And the answer on that one is no. It's still, the expectation is that the Kendall affiliates who have it, like Kendall at Lexington, will continue to be able to use the Kendall name. And there's a discussion of a couple of different ways to make that happen, but nothing has been finalized on that yet. So for now, I'm comfortable saying the Kendall name is staying here at Kendall at Lexington and at the other Kendalls. Yes, sir.
In connection with that, has anybody on the Kendall corporate side put this question to the attorneys? Because
yep.
It occurs to me that the name comes from Kendall Longwood. which was in existence before the Kendall Corp. But in the affiliation agreements and in the bylaws agreements, which are approved by Kendall Corp, every one of us says we can't do anything with the name without the Kendall Corp's permission. And it seems to me that Kendall Longwood gave that name to Kendall Corp a long time ago, and it ought not to be a big issue, but I think it would help if it could be resolved sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the comment, and it's really a little bit of the history, that the Kendall name started with Kendall at Longwood. That was the first Kendall back in 1973. But your opening statement about, are the lawyers involved? Trust me, there are lawyers. There are lawyers from K-Corp and from KCC that are negotiating the use of the Kendall name. But your comment, I think the same way you do. The comment was, you can't change your mind 50 years later and take the name away, or say, oh, we have control over it. When we have used it, I mean, obviously, Kendall at Oberlin, Kendall on Hudson, Kendall at Hanover, Kendall at Ithaca. There's Kendalls everywhere, besides Kendall at Lexington. And so I think we're on firm legal standing, to fight. We don't want to fight it that way, but the lawyers are involved on both sides at the moment. Okay? Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that historically, the community began at a place somewhere in the UK. I'm not sure if it was in England or one of the others, but there was evidently a count or a duke or somebody of Kendall, and that was the place where the Friends began working.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then there's a historical involvement in it too. And
Yeah.
we'll turn that over to the lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, the comment is that it started in the UK. I have to admit, I know the Philadelphia yearly meeting
Yeah.
was behind really the establishment of Kendall at Longwood. And then hence the Kendall Corporation, as the entity grew and there was a need for kind of corporate support of the affiliates. It's very, it's an open question. I think, I will say this, it's our initial communities, KCC, Crosslands and Kendall at Longwood. I like to think that 50 years of working together, we can find a solution that accommodates both sides. So I tend to try to live in an optimistic world. If you're working development, you have to be optimistic that you can get things done. But I really do believe that. There's not hostility between KCC and us. It's just, it's all a negotiation on how we
Is
disaffiliate.
it kind of a question of who's gonna run this place? Who's in charge?
The question is it a question of who's gonna run the place? No, I think KCC would like to just run their own communities, and the question about what happens with the name, you'll notice, and when Ben puts his slideshow back on, Enso Village, a Kendall affiliate. The Kendall name is there, even though the community is called Enso Village. And so that's a question as we go forward, as we develop new ones, and we continue to grow as a system, because the board and our leadership committee are working to support growth, and that is, and that's a way for us to continue to be strong.
Thank you.
So let me do this. Let me let Ben talk a little bit about Enso and the sustainability, and then we're happy to, I know we're in this room till 5. We'll stay, we'll answer any questions as much as you want us to stay. Okay, other questions while Ben gets his computer back onto the PowerPoint?
Try turning it off and on again.
Yeah, I'll steer clear of it. I have no technology skills, so I'll get out of the way. How's that?
Luckily, we have people here who have.
Exactly right. So I will say this, over the last few years, as Bill's kind enough to note, David Jones, who was my counterpart, who retired, was working with the team here at Kendall at Lexington on phase 3. Actually, he worked on earlier phases as well, and then David retired, so I got the pleasure of coming down to try and help wrap it up. So I was telling Ted, the reason Ben and I are here is to try and learn. I know not everything went swimmingly. I mean, the pandemic, I'll use the pandemic as a little bit of a cover, but our goal is to talk to Jan and the senior staff here tomorrow, and we're gonna try and improve our development system, our process, and how we help our affiliates do renovation and expansions. There you go. You're shutting down, it says.
Yeah, I gotta restart.
Okay.
2 more questions.
Oh, there it goes. Other thoughts or questions while Ben messes with his computer?
Hey, can you talk?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the financial impact of this change?
Oh, there's a great question. What's the financial impact of KCC's departure from the system? They do pay the largest affiliation fee in the system, and I will say it this way: there will be a financial impact. It will not be passed on to the other affiliates. What we are trying to do is, Ben's going to show you Enso Village. KCC's departure is actually timed with the start of Enso Village coming on. So Enso Village's affiliation fee will not completely make up, but make up a large portion of it. And then we are, K-Corp, we are working to find solutions, the way we're structured, what positions we refill, things like that, to make the budget still continue to work in the future.
Let's talk about it too, brother.
And then, as I noted, we have other projects in the pipeline. Enso Village, as Ben's going to show you, is opening up later this year. We are actually under contract and marketing in Southern California now too on another Enso called Enso Verde. And Ben can give you a little more information on that. And that one, it's again a partnership with the San Francisco Zen Center and the Kendall Corporation. But as you would expect, Enso Village has been so successful. There we go. Enso Verde is going to follow close behind. Okay, so as I said, I will hand it to Ben and then promise we'll continue to take questions afterwards.
Congratulations.
Thanks. We made it together. So Enso Village, we're going to talk a little bit today about the community marketing, sort of the development timeline, how it became, a little bit about its financing, sustainability features, and then I can take questions. And it's interesting, when we first started over 10 years ago in discussions with folks from the San Francisco Zen Center, I was on one of the first trips. I was a little bit skeptical about how this could work, right? And on the plane ride back, I remember talking to Steve Bailey from Kendall, and I said, they have an approach to caring for people that is similar to ours, and they look for the good in everybody, and they have this approach to simplicity, and they have this approach to mindfulness and meditation that I think talks to who we are with our Quaker values. And if you visit the community, and you'll see this in some of the images, central to the community is in a courtyard is a meditation space. The folks at the Zen Center call it a Zendo, and we from Kendall call it a meditation space. But to everybody, it's known as a place that folks can come together in quiet solitude and spend time together as one. And I think as you start to layer over the values and practices of Kendall with the approach to how folks at the Zen Center live their life, the relationship makes a lot of sense. And that sort of borne itself out in the marketing efforts of the community. That was sold out in less than 3 months. And currently, we opened, the first residents will move in on October 31st. We chose that date so I could remember it. And I can't forget Halloween. And those residents moving in, right now we're at 94% occupancy. a little bit of a dip, because, you know, the inevitable happens, people, you know, things come up, but we're really excited about the opening of the community. And the enthusiasm has been so great that we, Kendall, along with this team, Methuen Architects, Ziegler, who's been the investment partner for the project, Greenbrier Development, and Thornton Tomasetti, who's been a sustainability partner on the project, have decided to do it again. And we've bought land outside of Los Angeles. We have started marketing efforts. They have been wildly successful. And that Enso Verde, which will be the second Enso project, will start construction in the first quarter of 2025. So the current region where we're building Enso Village, you can see in this bottom left corner, that was the original site. That's the day we first walked it. You can see a group of us walking the property. It's in Healdsburg, which is Sonoma County. What helps a lot with the marketing efforts is that there's 400 wineries within about an hour of the I don't get to see them when I'm there, but I know they exist. I spend my time in a trailer, but looking at documents and plans. A lot of thought went into the development of this site for two reasons. We are from the East Coast. We did not understand three things. We didn't understand forest fires, we didn't understand earthquakes, and we didn't understand the impact of rain on construction. So on the East Coast, if it rains, everybody goes to work. In California, they don't show up for days. So we're behind schedule because of that. We didn't factor in enough days for the rain. And we're okay that we messed up on that one, but we didn't mess up on was the planning around being prepared for the threat of forest fires, being prepared for evacuation. We've got a close relationship with Sonoma County Fire. They're on the job site almost every day and walking the job site with us, talking about our emergency operations plan and evacuations plan and how that'll work. And the engineering firm that we hired, that we chose to be our partner in the construction, was the most conservative firm we could find. And we did that. They're based out in Northern California. They are familiar with what it's like to live through an earthquake in Northern California. For me, a kid who grew up in Buffalo who now lives in Philadelphia, I didn't fully understand it until I spent time out there. Now I appreciate it, we understand it, and we've got partners on the project that have thought that through. And those two areas, we know we've done a pretty good job. We've done a great job of being prepared for that. So the community is 221 independent living apartments, similar in size to Kendall, Hanover. There'll be 20 apartments dedicated for retired Zen teachers. And at Enso Verde, we have decided to have 20 apartments that are dedicated for folks who have lived a life of service. So those will be smaller apartments, similar to a studio apartment, that'll be at a subsidized entry fee or lower entry fee and subsidized monthly fee for folks that qualify that want to move into the community. And we have really focused on two things: net zero and doing as much as we could to build a sustainable project through what I'm proud of. I read the other day that there's less than 50 projects that have accomplished this to date in the United States. We've built the community entirely with products that are red list free. And then the second thing is we've diverted about 75% of the construction waste from landfills to reusable practice. And that has not been without a lot of heartache and headache and sort of figuring things out on the fly. But Thornton Tomasetti, who's our sustainability consultant, has kept us honest and visited this site often to make sure that we're meeting that threshold. And I'm happy to report that to date, we're 90% complete, that we're still meeting that threshold. This is an image of what the community will look like when complete. It almost looks like this now, but you'll see this is the main entrance. There's independent living, those front two buildings. And then we're gonna see an image in just a minute of the natatorium that's in the middle to the left. There's an outdoor garden, that's a working kitchen garden. And then to the right, there's an interior courtyard, and that's the Zendo or meditation space. And then the three fingers of the building there that you see to the right, those are administration, assisted living, and memory support. So when we think about the amenities of the community, I think the one that I'm most proud of is we have partnered with a restaurant in San Francisco called Greens. I'm on the board of Greens. Greens is a 50-year-old vegetarian institution on the West Coast. For many of us that grew up on the East Coast, Moosewood is its counterpart. And I am so excited that we're gonna have Greens-inspired recipes, Greens traditions, and a Greens bistro that eventually will be open to the public that's operating in the community.
If you use the mic.
Yep.
More? Yeah, okay, sure. Thank you. So in addition to the Greens-inspired vegetarian bistro, which we're really excited about, you will have the ability, if you're a resident, to get bacon for breakfast. So there is another dining menu that's available. And we're really proud of the fact that we've also created maker spaces, and I think you can appreciate this as residents. We've created several spaces throughout the community that right now we're calling maker spaces, that the decision of what those spaces will become won't be made until all the residents move in. So once the residents move in, resident committees start up and become part of the wider community, then they will decide how we'll program those spaces in the future. So will it be a music room, will it be an art room, will it be more meeting space, which we always need more of. They will help us decide that in the future. We thought that was really sort of a unique thing that we consciously said, we don't have all the answers for what this community is gonna be. And you know, it's interesting, I had the good fortune of working with, many of you maybe knew John Diffie and Judy Braun, who worked for Kendall for years. And we were talking earlier about the Kendall model. And the Kendall model was never about money. The Kendall model was about the model itself and the idea, right? This idea that each community has its own autonomy, has its own 501c3, has a board of locals that live in that community that make that community a Kendall. And I say all the time to people that ask me, I have a summer home at Chautauqua, and people at Chautauqua, when they find out I work at Kendall, want to talk to me, and they want to know more about Kendall, and I say, you really don't know Kendall because every Kendall is unique, and if you've seen one Kendall, you've seen one Kendall. And that's intentional, right? That's purposeful. And I don't know another system out there, and believe me, Frank knows everybody after being 40 years in the business, and he's introduced me to half of them because he can't stop. But all of the folks that we meet that work for our competing organizations say the same thing. Kendall is special. There's no other model like this. And you know, when Jan first started here, Jan and I would talk about the Kendall model, and it's maddening to manage in this model when you're first joined and try to figure it out, but once you realize how magical and special it is, and it really is the best thing for the residents, you don't want to work anywhere else or be anywhere else. That's why I've stayed for 16 years. But before I came to Kendall, I was a partner in a for-profit entity. And when we had a bad quarter, we didn't say we need to cut expenses. We said we need to grow revenue. Bill and I were talking about that earlier. And I think, you know, that's where we are now as a system, is we need to think about growing revenue again and expanding our mission, expanding the model and the concept, but bringing on more affiliates. Someone asked earlier about the impact to the financial wherewithal of Kendall Corporation. And I think we're gonna be just fine because of the Enso Villages, Enso Verdes, and new ideas in the pipeline. We've got a potential new community in Northern California. Frank talked about, there's an existing community in Vermont that's interested in potentially an affiliation with Kendall. There's several other projects in the pipeline that, if you want to ask more about those after and come see us, we'll give you a little more information. So there's still a keen interest in the model, in the idea, but the idea was never about the money. And I think if you make it just about the money, it's hard to understand how we work together. So this is another view of the community, but why I show this is we're part of a larger mixed-use project. So in the center of this is Enso Village, and you'll see that in red. But then beyond that are retail, on the first floor, retail spaces, and above those are apartments for the folks that run those retail spaces. They'll have a place to live, artisans, above their retail space. And then there's a boutique hotel with a Charlie Palmer steakhouse, restaurant, and then affordable workforce housing in the back of the project that'll be shared between Kendall and the boutique hotel. So again, we met the Zen Center over 10 years ago, started marketing in 2017. 2019, we had 1,000 priority reservations and deposits, and then the pandemic happened, right? So I dropped everything, for example, at Kendall, and focused on PPE. I didn't even know what PPE was, but all the communities, including Kendall at Lexington, started calling, so we figured it out, and we started shipping PPE to our corporate office, and then reshipping it out to all the Kendall affiliates. I'm happy to say, in those 2.5 years, we never went without PP in any of our communities. But that was a period of time where we didn't focus much on this project. Everyone focused on the communities, rightfully so, and on the pandemic. Came back to the project, 77% pre-sale met in September 2020, within 3 months, which was a record, Fred, correct?
Mhm.
And started construction, and we're now 90% complete, and again, we'll move our first residents in on Halloween. A couple of unique things for this project. It was the first project of its kind that was partially financed with green financing. So this financing had tied to it some designations related to the bonds that we used. And I'll give you an example. One of the designations was that the community had to be completely electric. So for us to qualify for this type of an arrangement for these bonds, we had to agree and then go back and forth and convince this investor that everything would be electric except for the kitchen. For somebody who came out of the kitchen and who loves to cook, it's really hard to cook in an electric kitchen for me. So they acquiesced and they let us build a kitchen that has gas. But the remainder of the community is entirely electric. A couple other things, direct waste for the construction. We had a target that they set for us that we would direct all the post-construction waste, 70% of it, from a landfill. The red list free monitoring that I mentioned earlier. We also committed to capturing gray water from the building. So all of the downspouts from the building and all of the runoff from the land are captured into above ground cisterns, and they're going to be used to water the kitchen garden that you'll see in a minute. I've got a picture of that's off of the natatorium. So the last thing was we decided to build a car barn. So a car barn was a green building alternative to underground parking. So a car barn is basically an above ground structure that holds 138 cars, and it's a series of puzzle lifts. So the car, it's an outdoor barn. Cars pull in, you walk away, and the car then raises up into the barn. So much more affordable, less impact on the environment, and it was something that we didn't have any experience with. I went and first looked at it in New York City, and after we left, I said, we're gonna do that at every community from this point forward. So it's operating, it's running now. Once residents move in, we'll let you know how it works out. If it works out great, it's something for us to think about in the future. But once we get the community up and running, then we'll understand better how it operates for us as a Kendall.
Ben?
Yes.
Are there emergency generators, and if so, how are they powered?
So there's 2 emergency generators. And unfortunately, they're the size of 2 Mack trucks because we made a conscious decision to be able to run 100% of the community at any given time. So we don't have the red emergency outlets. The whole community can be run, and they're on diesel. We will probably in the next 3 to 5 years look for an alternative to that. But at the time that we put together the plan to finance the community, it was the most legitimate, trustworthy way to power that type of project in an area that's prone to forest fires. So it wasn't our first choice, and moving to the University of Delaware, right next to us on the Star campus, is a company called Bloom Energy. And so we've been talking to Bloom Energy. They've got several different ways for us to think about that in the future that I think will be something that we implement for Enso Verde. But much to our chagrin, we went with diesel generators, and 2 Cummins diesel generators that are extremely large to help power the entire community. So a few other of the highlights, I won't read through all these, but I think the biggest thing from this is, we really tried hard to do 2 things. Build something that was designed to exceed the LEED Gold standard, and we did that. But we built it not going for that designation until the team was on site and moved in. And now the team has started, the executive director is in place, many of the other team members, and they've decided to go for the WELL certification and not go for the LEED certification. So again, one of the reasons we didn't decide, we wanted the team that was gonna be running the community to decide, so they've decided to go for a WELL certification. But we'll meet that standard because we far exceeded the LEED Gold certification. This is the entry to the community, so you can see much different architecture. You see the Enso to the right, so this is the main lobby. Interior of the main lobby gives you an idea of sort of the Northern California aesthetic, right? This is Sky Hall, so this is the main dining room, and that is their common table, the table that you see immediately in front of the picture, the forefront of the picture. And then to the right, you can't see, is an open kitchen. So there's an open concept kitchen, you can see into the kitchen. And then across the hall from this is a greens-inspired bistro, fully vegetarian bistro. This is a traditional menu, similar to what you'd see in any of our other communities. Natatorium, indoor natatorium, sort of in the center of the community. This is that kitchen garden off of the natatorium. This is gonna have a full-time manager that manages this garden for the community. And the idea is that this will not sustain, but provide sustenance, but not provide all the vegetables that we will need for the project. But it will be a working part of the community. This is the Zendo and that outdoor space adjacent to that. You see there's a fountain, and then to the left there behind that tree is a DocuSign and a tea garden. Rocks and sand, yes. That's correct. Typical interior of one of the apartments, and I was just in one of them last week. This is exactly what they look like. Amazing how close we came to this. And I'll just stop there and see if there's questions about Enso Village, Enso Verde, any of the development projects that we have, or anything that Frank and I have talked about that we could answer questions about. Yes?
You have a nursing home?
So there's 30 assisted living beds, 24 memory care, but no skilled nursing.
So that was my question too. Can you kind of help us understand how this design fits into the CCRC model?
Sure.
Yeah, I would answer, the question is about how this design of the health center fits in with the CCRC model. We are seeing, and I'm speaking broadly across senior living right now, a move away from skilled nursing. So in the Kendall system, we've had a number of communities reduce the number of skilled nursing beds and increase the number of assisted living beds. Because what we're finding is, at the state level, because obviously the regulations are typically state regulations, the state governments are allowing higher levels of care to be provided at the assisted living level. So we are finding that as an option that the residents of the communities would prefer. They want a more residential option, and so staying in a community that has assisted living as opposed to skilled. Now, I've been volunteered, I've been in senior living for 40 years. I got out of college in '83 and started working for what was the state affiliate of Leading Age, the National Association up in New York. And so I remember, the idea that when the baby boomers got older, we were gonna not have enough skilled nursing. And at a time when the boomers are rolling into retirement, 10,000 a day or turning age 65, and have been since 2010, we're seeing less and less skilled nursing. And it's because the care is being provided at lower levels. Now, having said all of that, I will admit that at Enso Village, for instance, we are developing a working relationship with a high-quality skilled nursing provider, because there is likely to be a possibility a person may need something that can't be provided at the assisted living level, and therefore they could move down, it's not far, but I mean, I realize that that's a little different than the model that we've existed on. I will tell you this, because I worked on this project, our affiliate in Bowie, Maryland, Collington, just went from 48 skilled nursing beds down to 0. They decertified their skilled nursing. The state of Maryland allows 2, actually almost 3 levels of assisted living to be provided. A very high level of assisted living, a more traditional level, and then there's memory care. So what Collington is moving forward with is the 2 higher levels of assisted living and memory care. And they have the good fortune of having, within a mile of Collington, a 5-star nursing home. It's a local Catholic facility, and they've developed a really good working relationship. And I talked to Megan Barber, who's the COO of Collington. And Collington's a big community, 325 independent living units. So as you'd imagine, that's a large resident population of well over 500 people. They've had, I think she said to me, as I talked to her 2 weeks ago, a little less than 10 people have moved over to Villa Rosa, which is nearby. And they provide shuttle bus service if a family member wants to go back and forth, or if they can drive themselves. But it has worked well. They haven't been long stays. It's a lot of times it's been rehab and things like that, and then they've come back to Collington. So I don't know that it's the ideal solution to this going forward, but I can tell you, I mean, I did a presentation at one of the, it was actually here in Roanoke. I spoke at a conference on this move away from skilled nursing. And I think, not surprisingly, state governments are in favor because they want to reduce the outflow of cash that goes into skilled nursing. But I honestly do believe the residents of the communities have embraced this approach, because with few exceptions, they can get a high quality of care at the residential level. So, yes, sir.
Is the business model for the health center allow for people from the community that aren't ENSO residents to use the health center facility? So do they accept private pay, Medicare, Medicaid, and so on?
If everybody heard that question, at ENSO, will the local seniors who are not members of the community be allowed to come in and use the health center? And the answer is yes. They will tap into Medicare dollars depending.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could you describe the fee structure vis-a-vis the rest of the candle system?
Okay, well, all right, that's a question, the fee structure for ENSO, and I'm gonna preface it by saying, okay, it's Northern California. You know what the housing resale value in San Francisco, the Bay Area is well over $1.5 million. So I will admit that ENSO Village is by far the most expensive, has the highest entrance fees of any Kendall. Is 1 point?
Yes.
1.9, I think is that the highest?
No, 2.6.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We are over 2 million. I think our goal at one point was to try and keep them under 2 million. But the folks, as Ben mentioned, we're 95% sold out right now. If you were fortunate enough to have bought a house in the Bay Area in the 70s or 60s, it's like you bought a lottery ticket, because small houses sell for millions of dollars out there. And what we have found is a lot of the resident population, because of the combination of Quaker and Zen, as Ben noted, it's been an amazing partnership. But the majority of the residents, the future residents, have come out of the Bay Area, where the real estate values are just kind of fueling it. So, the challenge for us, Los Angeles is probably going to be very similar because of housing values, but the challenge for us is to try and find opportunity to do this model elsewhere without the real estate values. Ted.
Are there any implications for us here with the sustainability and net zero type experiences you've had with ENSO?
That's a terrific question. Ted asked, is there implications for Kendall at Lexington about the approaches on sustainability, out at ENSO Village? I would note, it was on the slide, that one slide that had about 20 bullets. Ben said the entire community is electric. So you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, that's not environmentally friendly. But there was a slide up there, or a bullet up there, that's explained why. There are geyser basins, like Yellowstone geysers in Sonoma County. I never knew this until we moved out there. And Healdsburg it's basically a geothermal power plant. So they tapped into the geyser basin. So really, when you're using electric in Healdsburg, you are using a very renewable resource. So I would note that. And on another one of those bullets noted, because we've had the sustainability project group Zooms bi-monthly. We got 6 charging stations for electric vehicles, around the system. ENSO is going to have 40
84.
84 electric charging stations. There's that aspect to it, and I will say, Ted, the other thing that I think has been really amazing is that Thornton Tomasetti, they're a national engineering and planning firm. They have been absolutely terrific to deal with on, really holding our feet to the fire on sustainability at Enso Village. And so that at every project that we are working on right now, we either have a sustainability consultant or we have plans in the design process to have sustainability consultants. So I think you're gonna see us as, the Kendall Corporation as we go forward on new projects, and that includes renovation projects of existing affiliates. We are gonna continue to try and bring as much sustainable design and operations into the projects as we can. Yes?
What is the location of Enzo Verde?
Okay, Ben.
What was the question?
Yeah, he's gonna repeat it. The location of Enso Verde.
So Enso Verde is in Simi Valley, California.
Can you be more specific?
Yeah. So Simi Valley, it is at the end of Tapo Canyon and Guardian Way, and it's at the entrance to a property that's owned by Brandeis, and that's Brandeis has about 500 acres, I believe,
Yeah.
and it's a summer camp for a large community in the Los Angeles area, and our property is adjacent to the entrance to their property.
Okay, and I'll chime in for the East Coast folks. Closest landmark, the Reagan Library. Okay, because that may help folks who remember the Ronald Reagan Ranch, and he built the library. His library is 5 miles from Enso Verde. Yes, sir.
What is this gonna be called? I saw Kendall at Sonoma on one of the slides.
So originally, we didn't have a name, so it was originally called Kendall at Sonoma, but it is now Enso Village. But it won't be called Kendall at Sonoma, Enso Village.
All right, and we'll go to the legal discussion. The legal structure is Kendall at Sonoma, but it known as Enso Village. It'll say a Kendall affiliate in the title, and the same thing will be at Enso Verde. It'll always note that it's a Kendall affiliate.
I've gotten to know you over the years, even though I'm a lowly resident at Kendall at Lexington. And K-Corp, I think for most of us, is a very remote thing. Are there appropriate opportunities and benefits for more resident connection to corporate?
Ted basically was suggesting, he's gotten to know me over the last, as I say, I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary. And when David Jones retired, he had been staffing the sustainability project group, so I inherited that from him, and I've really embraced it, I've really enjoyed it. And really, what other opportunities for you as residents of Kendall at Lexington to have connection to the corporate office on these topics? I think the answer to that would be, we are going to continue to try and spearhead sustainable, as an organization, the Kendall Corporation, stewardship of the environment is one of our values. And we wouldn't do anything on the development world without considering the impact on the environment. Because, the built environment, when I took over for David, I don't know if you were on that first one, Ted. I came on and I said, I'm a developer. I've spent my last 25 years cutting down trees and building buildings, made everybody in the room cringe. And I said, but the reason I mentioned that is, it's when there is development, when there's renovation, that's the opportunity to take some older buildings, make them more energy efficient, embrace sustainability, insulation, windows. There's so many different ways to heat and cool that are more efficient today than when we originally built the communities. And if you look at the Kendall system, KCC was built in the first Kendall at Longwood opened in 73. And then we had a period where we added new Kendalls in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, so that we have communities at varying ages. So the hard part, or I would call it the challenging part on sustainability, is that these, you just went through phase 3. I know that the pandemic stretched it out longer than it needed to be, but that's the opportunity you know, when you do those types of projects, to try and build in more operational efficiencies. And, you know, we are not gonna do that, you know, corporately without considering sustainability. So, the sustainability project group is open to anybody. You know, you can zoom into it. If anybody's interested, I'll be happy to include you on our mailing list. We do it the third Wednesday of the month, every other month. And I usually get between 20 and 40 people on the Zoom. And after we have a kind of a global discussion of sustainability, we do a roundtable, and we just go around and, you know, Ted or Anita's here, others I know, you know, from the SPG Zooms, we go around and say, you know, what's going on at Kendall at Lexington, and, you know, your Trex benches, or, you know, there's a lot of really exciting things you're doing as a community. I saw the master plan out on the table while we were, you know, that's where Ben and I were sitting before we came in here. That was exciting to see, kind of the way that I knew that process from 2021 culminated with that report. So what I think the benefit is that when we put together those Zooms, we go around the room and the Zoom room, and each community talks about what they're doing, and you'll find that different communities have different ideas. I think Kendall at Lexington was the first community that came up with the Trex, right?
It was needed.
Yeah, and I don't know how many now. There's several other Kendalls that have Trex benches because of the example that they learned about the program from Kendall at Lexington. Bob?
For us, poor sisters that don't live in the rare atmosphere of Northern Virginia, I mean Northern California, how about financing for the future? Can you talk a little bit about your new rapid response group that you're creating to look at possible funding opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yeah, Bob's referring to a sprint group that we put together at K-Corp. The Biden administration implemented, I think it's their signature legislative achievement last year, was the Inflation Reduction Act. Not really named correctly because it's really a sustainability act. And there are currently 20 federal agencies working on implementation regulations. So what we've done is, you know, I'm one person, I'm happy to try and research it, but the idea was, let's get as many people to volunteer and gather information so that as the federal government is looking to spend $750 billion with a B over the next 10 years on a variety of programs that support sustainability. The good news is, historically you'd find the federal government would use tax credits and other things like that to get money out there, but that doesn't work when you're a not-for-profit. There's actually language in the Inflation Reduction Act that said dollars, you know, program dollars can go to nonprofits. So our expectation is, and our belief is, that there will be an opportunity for Kendall affiliates to tap into the federal monies. It's kind of a moving target. We've just started. We had our first sprint group Zoom last month. We were meeting monthly. Again, if you'd like to volunteer, you're happy to talk to me after this, and I'll sign you up. We are going to provide the information. I'll get it out to Jan and her team. As the federal government says, we're going to support solar, or we're going to help pay for energy or electric charging stations, or there's really, it's so many different things. It's the EPA, it's the Energy Department, it's agriculture, it's all these different agencies, and they have all got pots of money, and they're trying to find ways to get it out to the communities. One thing I would say is state governments are going to be a key to it. So relationship to your state government is important, because I think the feds are going to rely on the states to kind of administer a lot of it. So.
I think
Yes,
I
sir.
heard you say something earlier along the lines that maybe future developments could be a little more of a challenge given the experience with the two Zens. And so maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what's in the pipeline.
Sure.
And there's a sense in which these are, and I don't mean this critically, but they're kind of elitist communities. just by virtue of their price points. So what's going on in Kendall in addition to these two?
Yeah, the question is about the fact that Enso Verde and Enso Village really are higher end communities because of the cost to build in California. And you want to talk about Park Synagogue?
Sure. We're working on a project right now on the east side of Cleveland, on a piece of property that was a synagogue. And it was built by an architect, Eric Mendelsohn, who was a famous architect, fled Nazi Germany, came to the United States, and built a series of synagogues throughout the United States. And it is now that congregation that utilized that space for over 50 years has moved further east, outside of what would be Cleveland proper, and it's in Cleveland Heights. So that property right now is under the control of a for-profit developer who all three were graduates of Kendall at Oberlin College, and residents of Kendall at Oberlin were their first board members of the company that they started. So they have an affinity for Kendall. So they approached us and said, we think there's something here on the east side of Cleveland. We'd like to imagine the possibility of doing something that's attainable, that has Kendall in mind, that's led by Kendall, but is at a different price point. So we're working with them, sort of learning from their model of for-profit development and taking our model of curating community. And we have a potential project that is a building adjacent to that Mendelsohn building that will be existing on the property and will be open to the entire community. And we will use some of those common spaces, which reduces our overall cost of construction. And we believe that this may be a model for the future, this new model that we've developed, along with an architectural firm from here in Virginia, SFCS, who has created what they call a toolkit of ways to reduce the cost of developing these communities. So we've partnered with a leader in the architectural side of developing or constructing, and then we've partnered with a for-profit developer who has Kendall roots to see if it's possible. And we're right now in the middle of updating a market study that was done. We just finished the financial model that works. So it's coming closer to be a reality. Frank and I in March did a presentation to the Kendall at Oberlin board, used a toolkit that they created to decide if it was a go or no-go for a potential project that Kendall at Oberlin would want to be a part of. They've decided that at this point they do. So it's now just working through the minutia of the when and the how, and then going through entitlements and et cetera. But we think we found a different way to do it.
And I want to add another one too that we're working on. It's a mission focus of the Kendall Corporation Board. We were working with the first historically black college that was formed in America. It's called Cheney University. Thankfully, Ben covers the West Coast, so he spends his time in the aluminum tube flying to the West Coast. This one's in the Philadelphia suburbs in Chester County. And they are a small university, and they have approached us to build a senior project that would tap into their retired faculty and staff, as well as any alumni, and their alumni have tended to stay around the Philadelphia area. So we did a market study there. We did a test fit of what might fit on their campus. And so that's one, the goal will be not to build healthcare. And if you build a housing facility without healthcare, without skilled, without assisted, you can tend to keep the price point lower. It's not a traditional CCRC or life plan community. But really the goal is to try and find a way to make the project affordable to as many folks who would be interested in it. So that one, we were skeptical whether the college really will, we weren't sure what their point of view was. We presented a financial model and our results of the market research, and they were very enthusiastic about it. So we're still working through that one, very much like the Park Synagogue project. Our goal is to try to find a way to serve a broader segment of the market. And I know that Kendall affiliates have had that goal. Kendall at Oberlin acquired a small multifamily housing rental building that was right next to their campus. You say, well, that's a strange, I mean contiguous to their campus. And the reason is they were viewing it, they're not going to evict anybody who lives there. They're going to fix it up a little bit because it's a little tired. But the goal will be over time, maybe staff could rent those units as they turn over, and it'll be a way to support their staff. So we're trying to find ways to serve people, not $2 million entrance fees, trying to find a way to do it at a more affordable level. The cost of construction and sadly interest rates are really, when we were so fortunate at Enso Village, we financed it really at a time when it was during the pandemic, when really no one was financing. And we got one of the lowest interest rates in the history of senior living for that project. And over time, that's gonna save the residents of Enso Village more than $25 million over the life of those bonds, the 30-year bonds. But that will make the community stronger financially. So that was good fortune. Now we're carrying, that was an interest rate of 4 and change. Now we're carrying almost 7 in most of our financial models right now, so. Other questions or comments?
Well, we've gone over our. Yes, this is a senior living facility.
You didn't fall, Ted, that's the key.
Yeah, you didn't fall, good for you.
It's still recording too. Anyhow, I was gonna say, why don't we call, it's already 10 after 5. You have more than exceeded my expectations for this, and I'm sure Ben and Frank would be happy to talk one-on-one, but I think we should thank them and adjourn.